will be too late. It's now or never. Come hold. It goes somehow, Father. Now you know why I didn't become an opera singer. Ladies and gentlemen, I have now an exceptional pleasure introducing to you the founder and the executive chairman of JVP and Margalit Startup Cities Israel, and the Israeli correspondent of the Washington Post, Mr. Erel Margalit and Ms. Shira Rubin, please.
לא ידעתי שאתה כזה זמר. בדיוק. הם לא רוצים לדבר על פוליטיקה, אמרתי להם, סייבר בלי פוליטיקה.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for coming, and for Erel, who's with us here, Erel Margalit, who, just a few words about him, he is among the largest investors in cybersecurity in Israel, and an operator of the Cyber Hub in New York, which is the largest for civilian purposes there. So I think what's probably on the top of all of our minds now is what's going on in Ukraine and Russia, and the very high possibility that a whole new world is happening and being formed as we speak these days, these weeks. Erel, can you speak with us a bit about what you see as the possibilities for an international cyber alliance and how that kind of comes into play these days and why now is so critical for all of that?
Thank you, Shira. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and it's a pleasure to be here. I think this conference is bringing together some of the brightest people in cybersecurity, not only in Israel, but from around the world. And with great power comes great responsibility. And, you know, I think all of us are sitting and wondering what the hell is happening in the Ukraine. How can a single dictator take an entire destiny of a country into his own hands? And I think that it's very clear that what we need is the US to wake up and to lead NATO and an alliance that will stand against dictators not only in the Ukraine, but around the world. But in addition to the military alliance that needs to be there, I think that all of us here need to understand that we also need to establish a democratic cyber alliance. And it's been too long that many of us here in Israel were primarily concerned with the level of our technology, but not too often concerned with the values and the hands in which we are selling the technologies in terms of value systems and what we're doing. And I think that right now it's time that the US, but maybe Israel as well, as sort of the second country in the world that sells cybersecurity products around the world, I think that each and every one of you, entrepreneurs, investors, geniuses that are inventing things, need to take a stand on where is it that you sell your technology to. Because if we don't wake up, militarily, they will run all over you. But if we don't wake up, from a cyber standpoint, there's already interventions in countries' elections, whether it's the US or France or Brexit or even Israel or Germany. But the next intervention is not only invasion physically, but it's also an interventions on the rights of individuals, democracy, and the kind of values that so many of us share, but not always remember to bring this forward in our cyber dealings around the world.
And I'm curious, can you speak also a bit about the way we can use technology to enable democracies to do what they need to do to protect that set of values you just mentioned, and then to block the authoritarian regimes instead of the people who live under those authoritarian regimes, and as that ulai maybe connect to a SWIFT system or a NATO system, as you mentioned earlier, what can be done in that way that makes it a smart system that will reward and punish those who need to be?
That's actually a great question, Shira, because we're seeing the need to block the bad guys, the crooks, the people who smuggle people and money and smuggle money into terrorist organizations. And so now there's a demand in the world to block dictators and the people that support them financially. Well, with the current system, the SWIFT system, it's very difficult to do. It's very difficult to see what's kosher. And we need the next generation of the SWIFT and the money transfer systems that will have the kind of artificial intelligence, deep learning, and understanding who the people are. You know, one of our companies that we're very proud of is Erel. Erel, and Mark Gazit is sitting here, is actually building a system with cross-border payments which understands and creates a highway for people who are good, normative, and wants to operate between countries. Because today, transferring money between countries, not only in war times, but also in times of peace, is not so easy. But if you don't have information about the guy or the individual that comes from a bank from a country you don't know, it's very hard to know whether they're kosher or not. And the regular systems which have rule-based systems which are based on the databases of those organizations are not available in real time. So what is it that we need? We need a circle of trust, and we need a way and technology in order to guess, quote unquote, the person or the entity or the organization that's on the other side, whether they are normative, kosher, or whether they're trying to create any harm according to our value system. So whether it's Bank Santander or BNP Paribas in France, or whether it's Crédit Agricole or Citibank in the US, when they receive money transfers from other places around the world, instead of blocking Russia as a blanket, if this is something that the international community wants to do, they can identify those people that are creating harm, the dictators, those who support him, and the other people which are living their day-to-day lives. We have so many people from the Ukrainian, from the Russian community here in Israel that are friends, that are working together, and that we want to enable them to work together still. So the people who are abiding by certain principles and abiding by certain standards can operate. The people who try to hack the system, to monitor their own citizens in a way that is not legitimate, and to do things which are harmful to the freedom of individuals and the freedom of other countries need to be addressed. And if we wake up together, there's some of the brightest cyber minds here in the world, and add another value system between right and wrong, not just between the high end of technology and the low end of technology, then I think that all of you will find that you have the power to make a difference in creating an international cyber alliance which doesn't only bring the best technologies, but brings our value system to operate in a way that would secure a world which is freer and says no to those who want to infringe those freedoms.
And so does that infrastructure for a highway that would be regulated, does that exist, or would we have to start from scratch?
Well, I think a lot of it already exists. Every country has a CERT, a cyber emergency center that can bring the banks together, the energy companies together, the different sectors, the healthcare system together. But what we need is a circle of trust between the CERTs in each of these countries in a way that is creating the kind of cooperation that you have within a country's CERT on the international level. And these levels, I mean, what did we have? We had an intervention in democratic countries' elections in the last 5 or 6 years in Germany, in the Brexit, in the US, in a variety of places in France. And first of all, you protect democracy, right? If people choose, they need to be able to choose freely. The other thing that you need to protect, besides just the large organizations, is to protect the freedoms of the individuals. Yes, you need to use the kind of systems like NSO has, but in the hands of governments that you trust, which has a due process procedure that when there's harm, they know how to address it. But they're addressing it not because of a political rivalry, but they're addressing it because of real harm, and a real, whether it's terror or whether it's other harm that people are trying to make, governments can use it. But you need to be opinionated about what governments you're selling it to, and they need to opt into a certain value system that all of us should agree on with the leadership of the US, where the participation of Israel, of NATO, of other countries in Asia that abide by democracy, because otherwise we're going to find ourselves being taken advantage of, because people who attack with cyber have much more means than the people who try to protect from it.
Thanks so much, Erel.
Thank you.
And now, first of all, thank you very much, Shira and Erel. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce